चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वा पाणिपादं न चोपस्त्रपायु चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहौ न मे वैमदो नैव मात्सर्यकामः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे मृत्युशङ्का न मे जातिभेदः विनानैव मेनैव माता न जन्मः न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेयः चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानिनाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमेर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वा पाणिपादं न चोपस्त्रपायु चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपा शिवोऽहं.
A very good morning and a warm welcome to all delegates joining us today on this online platform for Week 22 Build Bharat, Safe and Secure India, a 25-week series which has commenced from 26th of July 2020, a purely knowledge-sharing webinar series successfully progressing each Sunday. Our entire team of East Corp Group is grateful for all your interest, support, and time for connecting with us today. We are sure you will find the information valuable shared here. In case of any questions or query arising during the webinar, we request you to please type in using the Q&A option or raise hand. During the webinar, also keep an eye on the chat section for links to view our previous sections, to register for our free consulting sessions, to enroll for our training programs, and to join our ECG community for newsletters, case studies, pocket guides, advisories on fire, safety, and security. We are blessed to have presence of our star speaker today, Mr. Santosh Varik sir, Chief Fire Officer and Fire Advisor of MIDC Fire Services, has got 26 of years experience in the field of fire prevention and protection. He has served on various positions in MIDC Fire Services. He is basically a science graduate. He has done fire engineering from National Fire Service College, Nagpur, and he is an MBA in finance. He has got expertise in firefighting of various occupancies and implementation of fire prevention and life safety measures as per National Building Codes of India. He has successfully handled various industrial projects, special townships, SEZs, and IT parks in Maharashtra. Welcome, Mr. Santosh Varik, sir. We have our group CEO, Mr. Hemant Khadse, who will lead this session. Let us proceed the session with a small prayer.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Come on, chant this one. असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Good morning and welcome back on week 22 series. Especially thanks to Mr. Varik sir for joining us today. I'm really blessed and privileged that we have today with us, and I'm sure his blessings and uh, enlightening address will really help everyone here. So, with this note, let me just begin today's week 22 session. There are a lot of new people who are joining us every week, so it is essential for me to uh, refresh and explain what is this all about that we talk, every week, every Sunday. There are many people that often I'm audible clear because I just
Yes, sir.
yeah, yes, okay, thank you. So there are a lot of queries, questions comes. So I need to appraise and brief everyone that this is a Dan India that we have started, and we wanted to specifically, reach out to end user community who are actually custodian of fire safety security, but then there are a lot of constraint that they have where they don't get exposure going outside their functional roles and responsibility and understanding what is this safety is all about, because we all always use the word safety is everyone responsibility, but there are very less efforts that the organizational level does to reach out to every or person in the organization, whether it's a junior level person or a unskilled person to the top management people. So we wanted to have a very very basic fundamental level understanding so that we are able to get 360 view of entire fire safety security, because all three domains actually works hand in hand. They talk to each other, they are all integrated, and there are many resources which are responsible to do all three function put together also, depends on the size and scale of the organization. So this is how we made an attempt to uh, look at all the minuscule part of the uh, fire safety security part of it. What's the culture is going to be required, how you enhance your culture, what is the mindset that is required, how it started from top management, what are the role and influence or impact of codes and standards on fire and safety into your organization. So most of the people, when we discussed this, they had a lot of clarity in understanding and differentiating codes and standard. And that's what we looked at, uh, how engineering starts with science. And whatever topic that we always discuss, which is fire safety, it is nothing but the natural science. It is what is inherent in your nature. Only we need to have that eyesight to understand and have that application into your day-to-day activities. So we covered a lot of aspects in terms of design engineering, how in design engineering can actually contribute or make a foundation of your planning planning stage in your organization, whether it's a new project that you are starting or whether it's a expansion that you are aiming. It is always and always starts with your strategy. So strategy is nothing but the basis of engineering, basis of design. We also focused a little bit on smoke management, which is the gray area and which is the most critical element of your fire strategy. And we invited a lot of questions on the same parameters, in understanding the pressurization, how your ventilation works, how your integration works. So there are many things that we discussed in detail. And last 5 6 episode that we spent on installation, operation, maintenance, and training part. How organization needs to mature in terms of maintaining the systems, and unless until you have a right takeover of your system, and specifically when it comes to your large organization where you have departmental activity, somebody does design, somebody does the project management, somebody does the uh, commissioning, and then all the totally new department takes over and start operating and maintaining it, and he had no clue or she had no clue what is actually conspired or what is the basis of it. In fact, I always ask um to when I start the audit specifically, I always ask that, okay, you're sharing this as built layout to me, or you're sharing this schematic to me. Can you authenticate, or can you just tell me, being a custodian of your system, what is the basis or compliance to your design? There are very few people are very crystal clear about it that, okay, if 3 years back or 5 years back, this system was designed based on this criteria, or this was a concept that we had in mind, and right now we are implementing based on that theme or based on that standard. So there is a lot of gray area in terms of understanding where we stand in terms of codes and compliance. So in fact, going forward, next 3 episode that we are going to have, and we are going to end by mid January, we are going to recap what we discussed in detail. We are going to invite a lot of questions and queries from you so that it becomes more interactive, more meaningful. And our whole attempt of doing this 25-week Gyan Yagga will definitely going to be successful only and only when people like you, community like you, are going to be making sure that you start implementing those information or experience or knowledge that we have shared at your workplace on a daily basis. And that's a key success for us, when you start implementing it rather than just digesting it at your level and just limiting yourself that knowledge with yourself. It has to be continuous journey. The information, knowledge, understanding, wisdom that you have got from last 22 episodes and probably in another 3 episodes, we only wanted you to start understanding and implementing at your place, or you're supposed to give it to your colleagues, friends, network, the same information, same understanding. That's the reason you are going to build that community, and that's the reason you are going to build that nation. And that's the reason we have named this entire mission as Build Bharat, because our effort is to build a community, and people like us, if start only teaching or sharing only knowledge and limiting that knowledge with ourselves only, and only commercialize that particular thing, then definitely it has some limitation. We can only reach to 5 customers in a year, 50 customers in a year, not beyond that. and we want to spread that knowledge in a bigger way, at a much larger way, and that's how we need your support in understanding this, and uh, coming forward with your queries, with your applications, so that we can help you in first. So today we are going to talk about audit and review, and this is again a very very important piece, I would say, at a last stage where people need to be aware and implement, because if you have a good system in a very well designed way, if you start uh, operating and maintaining that also in a nice way, but then if you just limit yourself to only and maintain what you have in a typical uh, checklist way, and then you're not having that eyesight of improving and auditing or reviewing your what you're doing or how you're doing, then there is no improvement further can happen, there is no enhancement that can happen. And it is always a constant journey. Unless until you keep doing that review process on a daily basis, you will not be able to achieve the system benefits or application that you have thought in the design stage will never get fulfilled, unless until you keep that exercise on all the time of reviewing what you have, uh, auditing internally externally what you have. That's the only way that you can keep your system, which is specifically I'm talking about fire safety system, healthy, functional, operational. Uh, Before we move on, let me, of course, introduction is already there for Mr. Varik. He is more than professional friend. It's his personal friend of mine who is a mentor, friendly mentor, I would say, in the domain that we share, and uh, we never discuss about each other business. We always have that that parity that whatever he does, it's totally independent. But I've seen him that although he is carrying that status or cadre in the position that he is here, but he never have that ego. He never have that uh, uh, mindset that I'm here or you guys are here. So that barrier he never have any mix up with them. That's a distinction that I have always observed, and that's reason we always keep sharing knowledge with each other, experience with each other, and I'm really delighted that he's going to be there. So I request him to enlighten today this audience uh, uh, with his few words. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Hemant. And I must appreciate the various topics you have handled since last 22 weeks, different aspects of fires and life safety, also security. So it is really appreciable. As far as fire and life safety is concerned, Maharashtra has done since 2005. We have come up with the legislation, that is Maharashtra Fire Prevention and Life Safety Measures Act. Basically, we work on four pillar approach since 2005. That is, first was the legislative requirement that was absent before 2005. So in 2006, we brought this Maharashtra Fire Prevention and Life Safety Act under the leadership of Mr. M.B. Deshmukh. And then rules came and the implementation started. So basically, Fire Act has got two aspects. Section 3 says about the requirement of minimum life and fire safety requirements as per the provision of National Building Code Part 4, and the various Indian standards related to industries. So we have got another set of guidelines from Oil Industry Safety Directorate for process industries, storage of LPG and all that. So that is governed as a regulator from the regular fire services. And the second issue was the maintenance of the fire protection system provided inside the building. So that is the real challenge to address this. As you know, there is a huge gap of professional fire officers in the state. Also, across India, it is the same situation. The gap of fire services in terms of number of fire stations, number of trained officers, and the fire appliances is more than 60 to 80%. In urban areas, it is 60-65%, and in rural area, it is up to 80-85%. So it is a huge gap. So almost it is not possible to get immediate response from the local fire services. The only thing we can do is to have the basic minimum fire protection system inside the plant itself, so that in case of real emergency, we can utilize and quench the fire at the initial stage. We should try to stop the fire at the initial stage. That will means avoid the subsequent losses of property and the precious human life. Then second pillar was to bring the training provisions. So we built a state fire academy at Kalina, and it is working for the regular fire services. Then there was a awareness requirement to the grassroots level. What is the fire safety that everybody, from common people up to common people, they should know about. They see the hydrant system, detection system, but how they work, how we should summon the fire services in case of emergency, what should be the minimum maintenance required for this. So that they should know about, so that they will be aware about what are the emergency exits, how to approach them in case of emergency. The fire door should be always remain in a closed position. It should not be open up. The fire escape staircase should not be used for dumping the waste or unwanted materials from the household. Or if it is an industry, it should be maintained proper hygiene, and the housekeeping of the industry should be proper. So these are aspects should be known to each and every person wherever you are working at that area and where you are staying. So you should know about what are the basic fire protection requirement provided in your residential building, also at your plant building, so that in case of real emergency, it should work, and immediately you should able to respond to that emergency. So all these are taken care, and as already said, there is limitations from the regular fire services to reach up to the grassroots level. So we are taking help of various NGOs and other bodies to reach to their clients or their members, so that this awareness can be drive further. And with this, I think the Fire Act, the knowledge of National Building Code Part 4. So this, if you communicate up to grassroots level, that will be a real help. And I think this platform is also going to help you help the masses. And this will you should be posted on your website, so that it can be revisited by our trainers also. Those training officers means undergoing at National Fire Service College or this fire academy, they should be in a position to see the real requirement at industry level. So with this, I think it is all the best for your this series, and thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your enlightening us. Really great thought. And I really appreciate the focus that your division is giving in terms of training and awareness, which is key. Not necessary that rest of the people in the industry or rest of the government department are actually doing specific efforts or active efforts in terms of training and awareness. So we really appreciate the way this focus has been given inside and even outside community. We are always there to help you in any ways. This session all are available on our website. The link is already there. In fact, we keep sharing that link in the audience group. We have built the social media community group on Telegram, on Facebook, where people collaborate and exchange the information on this, and they also get all the updates that we have in terms of webinars and training program that we do. That's how people are able to catch up on the activities that we do. So definitely we have long way to go. There is a lot of awareness need that is required in the industry. As we saw many times, that training actually can save the lives than these systems. So with this spirit, definitely thanking you for your keynote address. You'll be available throughout the session. So all the audience here, you can either put it your questions in case you have any questions for Parik sir in your Q&A options, or you can raise the hand. We will have this Q&A session at the end of this webinar, uh, so that you can get maximum benefit of his knowledge and experience today. So keep writing your questions during the session, and we will have again chat with Parik sir in few minutes time. So let's continue the the discussion that we wanted to have on audit and review program, which is a very important element uh, in the whole process of keeping your system live, functional, and operational. Of course, just to recap what we discussed, there is a link um, towards this topic today, audit and review. When we looked at the operation and maintenance cycle, um, the outcome of your efforts that you put in operation and maintenance is always an evidence in the form of records. And specifically when you are doing audit, whether it could be internal or an external, the evidence is the critical criteria or critical component of validating where you are up to. And that's the reason we gave an emphasis on this record or documentation last week, is to make you aware that there is always a purpose of making certain documentation or records, whether it could be near miss that you have, accidental history that you have, or maybe even mock drill or training that you guys do. There is always a necessity that evaluation criteria, feedback have to be taken, how effective your training has been done, then whether your mock drill is been conducted uh, based on your criteria, was any debrief that you have, was any hurdle or challenges that you had. So these are the documentation evidence that creates and build your system. And specifically when you are doing audit and review, there is no way that you can believe on people that, okay, if suppose auditor is going to ask you questions, okay, do you do mock drills? If you say your safety head is going to say, yes, we do mock drill every 6 months. There are many people who are saying that, yes, we do every month. But as an auditor, we don't have to believe on that statement when somebody is making, whether it's an officer or a manager, that every month mock drill is been taken place and point is noted and report is completed. There has to be evidence. If you are doing it every month, how many people attended it? What's the duration of evacuation time that you have taken? Was there any challenge that you had faced? Whether it was an announced mock drill or it was an unannounced mock drill. And this is how you need to build that confidence or culture in the organization of through the documentation. And that's why we gave the emphasis on this particular element. When you are doing that operation and maintenance, always and always keep an eye how strong is your documentation and records management. Even if there is a near miss, people just ignore it. And when that near miss was ignored, you don't take your corrective action or preventive action, one day that unsafe act will definitely result into an accident, and at that time you will not have time to recorrect that. So this is how documentation plays an important role in the organization, and specifically a safety department who's actually functionally responsible for doing this is the roles and responsibility. But there is always a need for everyone to be aware about it. If suppose you have that near miss happen, or maybe there is a ladder and then you just saved your trip, or while doing any work, you just saved somehow. But then if you don't report that near miss to your supervisor or manager, that worker, then that process will not happen, because that safety manager will not know that there was a near miss happened with you. And that's when this awareness like this is going to be helping everyone, that it is your role as well, not only recording role of a safety manager, but it is important that whosoever is involved in the organization must be supportive to the entire ecosystem of safety and uh, culture that you are going to build into the organization. So operation and maintenance, this is what typically cycle happens, but on top of it, there is always a hidden link here is the review program, because that is going to keep your cycle live unless until you have that review plan in your system. And it is always a mix to have internal and external review mechanism, because there is always a pros and cons between both. It's not just a cost saving that you should avoid external, or if you don't see value, you create a value in getting those experts from outside, because not necessarily that your internal experts, maybe it doesn't matter they are competent, experienced, have been working in your organization for long, they know it, but it is always a human error that can always overlook some of the uh, actions, unsafe act or unsafe behavior, or maybe there is a documentation gap, maybe there is installation gap. So there are several gaps that an external guy can notice it because he's coming from the outside industry. He doesn't know your organization well. He doesn't know your operation well. So he can quickly probably find out what's a gap in you. And you may have some hesitation because you yourself are responsible for doing that operations. So there are chances that you may not even open up that gap particularly, and that's when your improvement doesn't happen in that particular area. So you need to have a mix of internal and external uh, review mechanism, which is going to make your organization very, very strong. So this is how we discussed about it. Documentation, why it is important. So there are n number of documentation. This list is just a small list that I wanted to give you a kind of an indication that these are the critical area that you need to be aware and you need to follow the documentation in your organization. Doesn't matter your size, nature of your business, what you do, how we do, but these are the common elements that exist in most of the organization. And it is important that they have this documentation maintained, because this is what is going to be part of your review program. If suppose you have firefighting system and you don't have your layout to demonstrate what system you have, where is the question of doing the audit? You can only say that, okay, I have a system, physical system, you go and do audit, but that's only one check done. But there is always a desktop review that only can be done when you have a as-built layouts exactly in matching with your installation. Then and only then your design gaps can be identified, your installation gaps can be identified. Because as I mentioned last time, expansion, alteration, modification does happen in most of the organizations or several organizations. Your existing system has to be capable or competent enough to match up that expansion program, and your audit is going to be looking at that gap. Compliances is again area where you need to see that it is getting captured in the review program. There are many, in fact, Mr. Warwick sir is here now, he can vouch. There are many facilities, even in government facilities, basic statutory no objection certificate have not been obtained, or it is not available with them. Now, there are many organizations who knows that gap, but they will never act on it. But when you have done audit externally, specifically, and the auditor is going to ask you, show me a certificate that this operation is statutory compliant, then you look for documents and you see that this document doesn't exist with you. Maybe there are operations that you started which is not been reported to the local authorities. Maybe there is a storage, maybe there is office area in the basement area, but maybe document or permission shows a car park area, but you're actually using that basement area for storing some hazardous and combustible material. There are a lot of hospitals who does that. Basement is shown because it's a 30-year-old hospital. At that time, basement was intended for only car parking or something else. And then the application is now changed. The basement have gone further beyond, and the operation has started without reporting to the organization. And when this reporting doesn't happen, that means your system that you are trying to protect that basement also will not be adequate. Because basement do not have any protection. And when you do audit and review, then only you know the gaps that basement right now, this application needs compartmentation, needs your enough detection, protection, signages. So there are many areas that in terms of fire and electricity to be complied when you have a something like this application. So this is very important. Your maintenance history. This is a key document for an auditor to know how your system is going to be maintained healthy. Like sir, I just indicated now, Maharashtra Life Safety Act is in place, and it was the first state, I would say, in India who started this very um, important act in the state of Maharashtra. But then there are always Indian people always find some loopholes in the organization, because you can't make any law which is perfect. There is no single law that can make your system intact. It is always, people will always find the shortcuts, loopholes to pass away. Now, if there is compliance given in the Maharashtra Life Safety Act as every 6 months, the compliance certificate have to be issued. The spirit of that compliance certificate is that people should indulge in serious operation and maintenance practices, isn't it? But if spirit is not been followed and your only compliance has been followed without engaging a contractor, then that is something that is not acceptable or not a healthy practice. But the auditor, when he is on board, he has always, of course, the competent auditor will always look at just not a compliance certificate, whether the agency that has been on board is a licensed agency or not. Where is the contract? When it is last maintenance history or records? When you look for those answers, you will see that only certificate has been issued every 6 months and he is paid only for certificate, not for maintenance. And this is real fact. So this is what the spirit of the audit and review programs actually can help in a very, very big way, and it can open up your gaps in true sense. And it is always not a case that the top management or the owner have that intention of doing that shortcuts. It's only the management level find the shortcuts, assuming that chalta hai. But then when report goes to the top management, identifying, knowing the gaps in terms of practices that you follow, there are chances that probably it will get rectified before the accident occurs. They don't have to wait for accident to happen and then engage into audit and review what happened bad. Because ultimately, any accident that happens, when you do that, there are many people who still call it audit. It's a root cause analysis technically. But then ultimately, it is intended to identify the blame towards the person or department or action. But it is not the case. Audit is not something of blame towards division or people or department. It is identifying the gaps about the systems. So these are the elements that we discussed in terms of documentation, and we saw it when the accident happened. You start covering the gaps and you end up paying more. Instead of looking at some saving, minute saving, you will technically or actually pay more if you don't follow the right documentation practices. And it's a huge penalty, it's a huge expenses, because you don't have any records there. You have to build up right from scratch. So this is very, very important that you need to have a retrospect on yourself and look at how your documentation have been followed right from beginning. When your construction starts, do you have still the concept layout? Do you still have a design brief available with you? Maybe at that time compartmentation was missing, but you will only know when you have this documentation available today in the form of uh, through the audit, that this is the gap today, compartmentation. And it is not just a uh, new regulation that is coming in the national building code that you need to follow. It is a need based on your risk, because when you do audit, technically you will also do a risk assessment. And when you know the risk assessment that it needs a compartmentation, which is not thought 10 years before, but the application have changed now, you have to understand that gap and see that it has been mitigated in phases. So these are the flow of documentation that every organization need to look at it and follow in sequence, follow it in phases, so that it will help you to do a review and audit, as and when it comes in. So this is what it is going to be the important phase. And I'm going to recap this, what we discussed, because this has a direct impact on your review and your audit. And most of the organization do not have the documentary evidence, or they don't give importance on documentary evidence. As I mentioned to you, you ask questions, they will fill the questionnaire. Yes, we do mock drills. We have a maintenance contractor. We have a systems. Everything yes, no, and this is how they feel that audit is being fulfilled. But a real competent auditor will not just believe on the statement. They will look for evidence for each and every component, and that's how the whole intent of doing the review. Egress plan. People do not know occupancy. What's the real occupancy that comes into the facility? I think I mentioned to you one of the episode that a building which is unfortunately is a government building, where the floating population is so high that the two exits, which is designed 10 years back for that G+4 building, is not adequate. On top of it, one exit is apparently blocked because of the record. So many records there that the staircase itself is blocked. So technically, only one staircase exit as a fire emergency exit for that G+4 building, and wherein the occupancy is not designed to cater that number of exits. But when somebody does the audit, then only they know that the gap, because they have been doing that, operating that building since last 10 years, and all of a sudden the accident happened, and then they realize that they are not able to take the people out. People jumped out from the windows, and a lot of casualty happened there. So this is what the planning is going to be helping, and documentation is going to be helping, and which is going to be a key base for your audit that you do. Installations stage. People need to follow the documentation as the project gets shape up. Project gets to a level from foundation to the advance. If those elements are captured, then only you can identify what's the installation gap. Like example I gave you, you have a commercial building, or say office building in an industry plant, where false ceiling has been used. Now, since it has been constructed, a false ceiling depth itself is not known on the AutoCAD layout, or a design layout that you have, architecture plan layout. So how do you know that that ceiling void gap is more than 900 mm or less than 900 mm? Does it need protection, or doesn't it, or it can get away with protection? So the layout is going to be evidence for you to identify ceiling void more than 900 mm need to be protected with sprinklers or detections. So these are the stages that you have. Maybe at the planning stage, false ceiling was not emphasized, but maybe operational requirement they have decided to have false ceiling, and the sprinkler gets hidden. I've seen many installations. Sprinkler was there at the ceiling level, and after 4 or 5 years, because of the aesthetic issue or because of some modification that interior layout get changed, you have a straight true ceiling, and you are forgetting that there is a sprinkler on top. So how do you maintain it? The drawings are not updated. Neither the maintenance guy knows that there is a sprinkler on top, and there is no protection available. So there are a lot of surprises do come when you don't follow the installations construction phase right way in either in a new construction or modification. So this is very, very important what you need to have. The equipment that you have, whether it is ISI marked, simple basic thing. They look at each other face. No, I don't know. It was procured by purchase manager. But you are a maintenance manager. You should know. You are a system custodian. You should know the hydrant that you have, or a hose pipe that you have, or uh, or extinguisher that you have is a listed product. It's not a purchase manager. Purchase manager will only follow what has been assigned for. Okay, so if your system itself is weak, that you are not giving him enough information to procure right equipment, there are chances that he might make mistake. He will just go by commercial logic. L1 will get the order, and you have 300 extinguishers in your facility, and you don't have a certificate. And when real case comes in, when you want to really operate an extinguishers, there is no pressure, there is no gas. Yeah. So this is very important that in an organization needs to be aware and understanding that these are the documentary evidence which will become base for your audit and review program. I gave an example of pump house. Typically, when you have a firefighter pump house, it is supposed to be on auto mode. You can always see the panel and check the operations of it, whether it is an auto mode or manual mode. Ideally, by course and practice, it must be on auto mode. But what is the sequence that you are going to follow? When the jockey is going to be start and stop, when the main is going to get activated, when the diesel is going to get activated. If you have a chart available which is displayed in the pump house, then and then only auditor can identify and validate the performance of the pump. What is the flow capacity of the pump? What is the pressure head? Whether it's a shut-off head, what is the shut-off head? What's the hydraulic class that we have? Whether are you getting a remotest pressure on the sprinkler at 0.5 bar or 1 bar? Calculations is going to be validating that. So auditor is going to ask you, show me a hydraulic calculation for your system to authenticate that in a high-rise building or in a plant, your sprinkler system, which is the remotest sprinkler, is having enough pressure and flow. But many building owners will say, no, I have a system, that's about it. Now do the audit, that's all. I don't ask me any questions. Yeah, so it doesn't work that way. Having a system is just one thing, but having a system which is backed up with the design and calculation is the one also important to make sure their system is healthy, functional, operational. Otherwise, water will not come. You have supervising, I mean, you have isolation walls on the sprinkler system, and it is not connected to the fire alarm with a tamper switch. And people will just keep it off. And there are many cases, I think I mentioned in one of the cases that on the malls in Bombay that I've seen, I cannot name the mall, where sprinkler system wall was kept on off condition, and it is known to all facility management because they are afraid of operating that sprinkler. And if it is a running mall, they find that water discharge might disturb their operations. Look at the analogy that they have. But if the audit review has been done, then they know that the isolation wall, if at all you're going to use it on a sprinkler system, must be supervised. And how do you supervise? Get the tamper switch connected to a fire alarm panel. Put the fire alarm panel in auto and functional mode. Know the exact location. If the person is going to switch off the isolation wall or stop the isolation wall, you get an indication, you get a trouble. This is what your audit and review program. PA system fantastically been installed from a imported manufacturer, and it is kept in an area which is not manned. Now, what's the application of PA system? Auditor is going to ask you, show me how you are going to operate. What's your SOP for operating your fire safety management? Who is responsible for making announcement during normal hours, during offline hours? Show me SOP. Is the person who is responsible for making announcement is been trained regularly or not? Show me the evidence. When it has happened, what's the frequency, whether the training is been done effectively, the person has understood it or not. What is his feedback or her feedback? And this is what the analysis that you will have through the audit and review program. Because then you know the gap. I have a system, but I don't have a system to manage that system through the people, to the trained people or competent people, or I don't have resources straight. And there are many cases where you have that constraint. You have a system, but there is no resource. You have control room, but there is no person who is monitoring it. And it's been there since last 3 years. People are happy of having a system, but there is no person to monitor it. So this is what the gap that people can identify only and only when you invest on the audit, which is internal and or external or both. Any questions so far? What not to do in case of fire? There are do's and don'ts. Good question. So it's not just straight question, straight answer that I can give what you need to or do, but then definitely do not try and use extinguisher if you're not trained in case of fire. Focus on evacuation. That's what straight answer I can give you. But there are many do's and don'ts that that you can define as part of your emergency planning or part of your SOPs as an occupant to do what in case of fire. Yeah. Any questions? Please drop in because I got a lot of things to cover. I might miss out the Q&A, and then we have to catch up shortly with Mr. Warik about question and answer that we can have. Yeah, so I'll just run a simple poll to make the audience engage, see whether they are not sleeping. That's a question on your screen. The first 2 steps in a 5-step risk assessment process are, so risk assessment, there are always 5 steps. So what are the first 2 steps? Do you think that the identify the hazard and record the finding is the first 2 step, or identify the hazard and the person all the risk, or identify the hazard and evaluate the risk, or identify the person at risk and evaluate the risk? Little technical juggling, but carefully read and click on one option that you think is right. The second question is, which is the first option to control risk? If there's option available with you, find a safer way to complete the job, provide training for all staff, provide protective clothing, or eliminate the hazard altogether. Okay, so very, very simple question. Click on one option that you think which is right, so we can know how we stand in terms of awareness. in identifying the risk management as such. So I'll wait for 10 seconds quickly. Many people are still reading. Just hit on one option. I'm getting a lot of diverse answer, which is good. At least people are honest in their opinion. So there are still people who are thinking. Please keep on clicking on one option quickly so that we can end the poll. Very good. Okay, so should I end the poll now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. So that's the result of the poll. The first question, the maximum people answered identify the hazard and evaluate the risk, which is wrong answer. So it is the identify the hazards and person at risk is the one that is the correct answer. Second one, which is the first option to control the risk? People still feel that, or most of the people feel that training, since I talked a lot about training, people find that training could really minimize the risk. It is not the case, friends. Eliminate the hazard altogether is the first option. Okay, because if you don't eliminate, then you can work on a second option of minimizing the risk. But training, of course, that never comes as a device. That is always going to be the whole ecosystem of it. But technically, for risk management, you have to focus first on eliminating the risk. That's a most strong option that you have always. And once you work on that, then only you can eliminate it. But if you think that no, you cannot eliminate it, then second option could be minimizing. So both question were little tricky, and that's when I pushed it. So thank you so much for your question and time. Okay. So fire risk management, I'll just quickly run through this couple of slides in next 10 minutes time so that we can get enough time on question and answer and hearing from Mr. Warik. There is slight confusion or clarity required in understanding the risk assessment. Now, risk assessment by dictionary, if you follow, then this is what the definition is going to come. It's a really systematic, methodical, organized way of looking at your premises, looking at it, what's happening in and around, what are the chances of likelihood that fire can happen, or risk that can have, or hazard that can cause harm in and around your facility. So it is, if you look at it all, the definition that is displayed on the screen, it is showing that it is an elaborate process. It is really broad process in terms of length, breadth, and depth, because it is a risk assessment. And always based on the size and nature of the organization must focus on doing the risk assessment at various stages. Not necessarily that fire risk assessment can only and only happen when your facility is up and running. No. It can start right from inception, right from planning. Because it is a very, very detailed, organized, systematic way of looking at the things. Even if at your planning stage, building a hotel, when architect plan comes to you, you can do a risk assessment in checking whether your structural fire resistance is complied or not. Your fire and life safety component is being followed or not. So entire risk mapping can be done on those architect layout at planning stage even. How many people do it? Hello. First of all, people don't even know that there's a risk assessment required at the planning stage. They say that, okay, let my plan get up and running. I'll call my somebody friend ask him to send a report, and then I look at it what improvement I can have or I can mitigate this. This is what common, no blame game. So risk assessment is a very, very methodical way of looking at the things. However, audit is something slightly different. It's like a difference between sales and marketing, right? Very common way I can just tell you. Sales and marketing are definitely not going to be same function. Marketing is broader, sales is specific. So it's exactly the same way it works. So what happened in fire and life safety audit is basically a collection of evidences based on information that you gather, and I gave you a lot of examples today in through the documentation that you can identify. But audit is always and always done based on some benchmarking criteria. So when you know the performance based on that criteria or benchmarking that you have, it could be best practice, it could be global practice, it could be basic your local regulation that you can have. So it doesn't matter what benchmarking there, and there is no plus minus in any way. It is your benchmark. But based on that, where you identify the gaps is been reported in the form of action plan. Gap analysis is the one that is going to the audit. I don't want to get into inspection because then I need another one day for only talking about this. It's my favorite topic. I keep writing a lot of blogs on that. There's one coming up in next month on specifically on this topic. So you need to be carefully using that words, terms, and specifically a message to all safety professionals here, because there is a lot of confusion in the mind. Risk assessment, audit, inspection, all are relative terms, but cannot be used interchangeably. So essentially risk assessment, if you focus, there are only three key objectives. Of course, there are many you can have, but very, very specifically, there are three objectives that you can have from risk assessment. One is identify your devil. Devil means hazard. Know your hazard. First and prime objective. Because if you have a risk assessment and you don't able to focus what is the devil in your organization or in your plant or building, that's not the right risk assessment. So first and foremost, objective has to be focusing on what is going to hampering you big hazard. Then comes your reduce your risk from that hazard, which is going to cause your harm to the minimum as possible. I mean, reduction is again a relative term. You can reduce 1%, you can reduce 10%, you can reduce 70%. So that is how you need to relatively come up with an option based on your cost benefit cycle. How much risk reduction is possible? What is the mitigation plan that you need to have? What is the investment that you need to have? What's the cost benefit cycle for me? What's the revenue or cost recurring expenses that I will have? Is what is going to come from risk assessment. And third is deciding what is my action plan, what precautions I need to take, what arrangement I need to take, what are the safety requirement that is required, and if at all the fire is going to start, is my organization ready? What is my preparedness level? What is my protection level? What is my prevention level? That's going to come in your action plan. So this is how essentially a risk assessment is all about. I'll focus here on very, very important, but most important steps very, very quickly. Because if you understand these 5 steps, I think today's session is worthwhile. Many people probably know, good to refresh, no problem. Unlearn yourself. Take your cup of tea, empty and refill it with us so that you can refresh. But very, very important steps that every professional in the organization who is responsible for carrying out the risk assessment need to know. Now, not necessarily that everyone is involved in the risk assessment, I agree. But at least you know this topic today. Probably the guy who's going to come to you doing the risk inspection, you know what is his intent. So you'll not hide the information. You will support him to make his job functional. This is our advantages. And that's how the training whole purpose is. So first is identify with what. What is the source of ignition? Whether it's a fuel, oxygen, like typically fire triangle that we see, you know. So focus in fire triangle, see what is the hazard involved, from where it can ignite. What is the source of it? Because when you know that particular element in the organization, whether it is coming from any specific material, that material is a liquid, gas, solid, whether is any construction practices happening, welding is happening, hot work is happening, whether there are any vehicle which is going to have exhaust, which can also be in a car parking specifically, is an electrical gas, practices or process involved, is any cooking. There are a lot of restaurants where kitchen is, so what is that hazard? What is the ventilation? How electrical system has been flowing through? What is my process involved? If my utility itself is going to be critical, which is going to carry a lot of fumes, hot liquid, do I know that? Do I know my any static electricity which is going to come in the form of arrangement that I have? Is any electrical equipment that I am using it is in faulty, or life age is over? Is there any smoking area? Is there any hot surface where we need to have segregation? What is my storages that I have? Is there any arson that can happen? If my facility is going to carry a lot of storages, what kind of fuel that I'm dealing with? Is there any safety data sheet that I'm having in place? Is it being displayed? In fact, next week I will have one friend of mine who's going to share his case study. Today there is no time, but he's going to tell you the exact significance of this fuel. And the accident that had happened just 15 days back in nearby Mumbai, he'll come and share the live story. How this has exactly happened. Knowing the hazard, knowing the fuel, that itself is a big gap. The guy didn't know what is there inside. Look at the irony. What is the content? How it can impact? Because if you don't know itself, you don't know how to handle it. Simple. Is there any packaging material that I'm going to using it, which can also add the fuel content? Maybe there are storages, packing materials, corrugated boxes, plastic, expanded plastic. What it is? What is the commodity classification? Is there any interior material that I'm using which is not flame retardant? Like typical hotel, you have got a lot of interior material, carpets, this, that. Do we know the fuel? Do we know the oxygen? Where it is coming from? What are the openings? How my ventilation is going to be, this thing. If there is a fire, can air complement my fire? So supplement fire. Or is there any mechanism that I have to cut off that? So you need to identify all ignition resources. Fire triangle. And this is what your application of your engineering is here in true sense. There is fire triangle on some everybody in presentation you have fire triangle, but true meaning of fire triangle is here. How it is going to impact, how it is going to be deteriorating your facility. Identifying those things. And once you know it, then step 2 is what? Identify people at risk. That's what I gave a question. Second priority. Once I know the hazard, second is what? Identify people at risk. If at all something goes wrong, how many people can affect? whether they are going to be what stage they'll be awake, they'll be sleeping, what demography that they will have, whether it will be physically handicapped people, children, age. So that again based on occupancy you can have. But how many people will be at risk will be the second step of risk assessment. There are many people who are going to work alone, like facility staff, cleaning staff, right? They are not supervised. They could be at risk. And it had happened in one of the case where electrical guy who was maintaining the was doing some maintenance work in the electrical shaft remotely. There was no person who was knowing what he's done, and something went wrong without PPE. There is no help provided. So do you know that risk, if at all? Risk of your own people, risk of your visitors, risk of your contract employees, risk of your uh, top management, anybody. You have to look at all occupancy classification, all demographic. So what is the risk? What is the level of risk? Whether it's a catastrophic injury, near miss, or something that can be a fatality. So that's a second step. That is step 3 is look at the evaluating. Evaluate the risk. Is in a way that you can reduce the risk? Is in a something that you can protect from that risk? This is what your step 3 is going to be. Evaluating the risk. Evaluating the risk from occurring. Prevention. Because if you know that the material is going to having some flashpoint or his property is such that it can ignite this fire, can I contain it? Can I provide a protection which will have cooling effect? Can it be extinguished quickly? So this is how you need to evaluate the risk to the people, evaluate the risk to the occupancy that are available. And then of course there are a lot of theory that you can apply, whether the heat can or flame can pass on through the convection or conduction or radiation. What is the impact of it? So this is all again engineering method of risk assessment, detailing way that you can identify all 3 areas. What's the impact in terms of convection, radiation, or conduction? How do I protect it? Whether I need a fire barrier, whether I need a compartmentation, whether I need curtain systems. How do I segregate it? How do I protect it? Again, that is what is going to come here. And then of course you can work on uh, removing and reducing the hazard. That's what is the first plan of action that you need to have. If you know that hazard, if you know the risk is high, then the question comes, can I eliminate it? Can I remove it from the entire process? If you cannot, it's a part of your ingredient process, then see how I can minimize it, how I can reduce it. Go to the level of ignition source, go to the level of fuel source, go to the level of oxygen source, and see how it can get reduced, how it can impact less, so that you can have a no catastrophic or fatality expenses. So this is again some of the engineering methods or engineering controls that you can have, some of the administrative control that you can have, which will ultimately reduce the risk from fire. Again, this is what important step of entire thing. Then your system will get invented here. What kind of detection system will have? What kind of warning system will have? What kind of protection system will have? What is the application of your entire system? How effective it will be? Whether it will be manually or it will be automatic? Who is going to be doing it? How many manually appliances will be there? What is the level of training that is required? All and blah 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 will come in detail in terms of knowing it. What is the mitigation plan that you will have? And of course, a lot of fire electricity component in terms of escape route and emergency management will come subsequently as a byproduct, because when you are working on mitigation plan, then all these things will be part of it. your regress plan, your emergency plan, your any horizontal evacuation that can have, what is the refuge requirement, what's the ramp requirement, everything will come here as part of the byproduct once you start evaluating the risk, once you identify it, and once you work on a mitigation plan of it. Yeah. Step 4 comes again as recording, which is my favorite, which we discussed in length. Informing it, instructing it. What's the mechanism? What's the system that you have? Are you following it right from top to bottom? What are your findings? What actions you have taken? If you know that near miss happened in last 1 year, what specific actions you have taken to not to happen that near miss? CAPA, corrective action, prevent action. What actions people need to take in case of fire? Somebody asked the question. It will come here. Including the detail of persons who are going to be carrying that particular task. SOP, your emergency plan, on-site, off-site, your disaster management plan, all will be coming here, will be scrutinized here. How prepared are you? How effective system are available with you in terms of recording, informing it? If the near miss happened, if the person is not educated enough to report to the supervisor, lack of system, capture it in audit or risk assessment, sorry. So these are some of the findings that you will come up in when you start working on this entire record management or a system that you have. And then you know that you are not able to reduce risk to the great extent. You are able to only reduce little portion of it. You still have gap in terms of emergency plan, emergency egress plan, informing or communications, instructions. Maybe there is a SOP, but it never gets percolated to the organization. Yeah, people don't coordinate, people don't cooperate. That's a gap. It's an organizational gap. It's a culture issue. Because training doesn't happen effectively. Yeah, they are just doing it for namesake. That's very important. Step 5, review, which is the crux of it. Review mechanism has to be very, very strong. And that's what reason you see most of the large organizations, successful organizations, they have very, very strong and robust review mechanism. Review of everything. Let us focus today on only fire safety management perspective. But review culture, if it is strong in the organization, it's going to impact heavily and creating that very strong culture and discipline in the organization. And it is going to really fetch value in long run. So how review are happening? If there is a change in system, are you looking at review? People don't do HAZOP most of the time because they don't know whether HAZOP is required if there is a change in process. That's part of your review mechanism. If you are converted from your accounts office to a storage area, review has not been done, protection mechanism has not come in place, and all of a sudden something goes wrong, you don't have a sprinkler system there. Review. So how frequently are you doing it? How systematically are you doing it? Who is going to do it, internally or externally? What is the failure mechanism that you have captured? Do you know all your storage risk currently, which is probably not there in 5 years back? So look at all potential risks. Have that continuous way of reviewing it periodically, internally and externally. Again, I'm repeating the word internally externally because I'm not here only and only asking you to invest only on external. You still have to invest on internal. And I'm going to be launching the program on this internal review program, which is going to be something which is going to be really helping all of you in understanding that particular thing. Yeah, clear so far? Any questions on these 5 steps? Please raise a flag. There is a question, so we can answer it. Yeah. So any questions? I can read it. I sorry, I'm comfortable in using English. Not that I love English, but uh, somewhere there are some international people also joining it, so it's something not possible for me to change the language. So sorry about it, Mr. Chavan. Mm. Any reference books available? There are many reference books. There are uh, many knowledge available, abundant. But see what is relevant for you, and then invest on those knowledge materials. With respect to change layout design of the plant, what are the key points to consider while audit? Yeah, so all elements you have to consider this as all. You cannot just only do it in pieces. Identify all these 5 steps. If you have done some changes in the layout, how what is the hazard involved? How it can impact? What is the mechanism that you have to reduce it? Yeah. How you evaluated that change that can impact? What are the systems required? And how we are going to be reviewing that frequently to operate maintenance. This is simple. That's why I give only very in a simple way that 5 steps, which you can apply for any change in layout or any design that you will have. Yeah. So good. So I don't see any hand raised. So um, let me ask one question on behalf of everyone. Till that time, people are ready. Um, Varis sir, when you look at the most of the occupancy in India specifically, uh, people need to follow compliant, and people also need to follow safety. So they need to balance both. They need to invest on both parameters. So where do you think the industry is moving? So what is your thought on that?
Uh, issue is majority times IT industry or any industry, maybe small, medium, or large scale. They start with the scratches, and the growth as and when happens, they put different requirements as per the, maybe due to environment impact, or maybe change in the fuel, or maybe the change in the technology. So segregation of various risk, that is whatever electrical transformers, underground storage tanks, above ground storage tank like LDO, then the storage of raw material and finished goods, and the actual process area. This segregation is very important. So you have to have minimum 6 meters distance between all these activity, so that anything goes wrong in any of the pocket, from the business continuity point of view, you can address that particular pocket only, so that exposure hazard can be limited. So no, as you already told, that due to the radiant heat or the transmission of heat through the different modes of conduction, convection, and radiation, it should not expose to other important parts of the industry. So that is the main issue. And for other industry, maybe the hotels or malls, or even IT parks, you have number of units there, and as an basically in BPOs, they keep space very less for the occupants. So as per standard, it should be minimum 10 square meter per person for office building. But here, in that 10 square meter area, 4 to 5 persons are accommodated. So that is the issue when you plan the mock drill. So if you have in a single IT park, majority of the BPOs, then your occupant load is 3 to 4 folds more when you plan. So you have to consider all this aspect while framing. You should have the additional exits that should be pressurized, so that, like the fire tower as suggested in National Building Code 2016, so that it will help for the easy evacuation of occupants in case of emergency. Also to the firefighters who are reaching on the upper floors, they can utilize that lift provided in the fire tower because he is also a human being. So it is not expected that he should climb all 10 or 15 floors to douse the fire or to carry out the rescue operation. So considering this, there are various aspects coming in various types of occupancies as far as safety is concerned. So while doing anything expansion or bringing in some new utility or new plant, you should have this in mind that anything goes wrong, you should be in a position to isolate it and to prevent the exposure hazard to the other surrounding areas. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Very good. I mean, although now NBC 2016 Part 4 talks about doing the independent audit from competent third-party agencies for a high-rise building, specifically more than 15 meter. That's only one para that has been added. But of course, there is a one spirit that is talking about it in terms of audit, investing. So where do you, I mean, how do you address the community here that first doing audit is going to help, and should they limit only to this compliance, or they should invest, doesn't matter the how big or nature of the organization is? What's your uh, takeaway to the audience here in terms of audit?
Oh, audit, there are, as you already told, there are various types of audits carried out in industry. But every plant has got specific requirements, and whosoever is the manager and the people working over there, they know the risk better, actually. As a firefighter, if we are coming from the external side, or we cannot judge your plant within 5 minutes or so. So as far as the process is concerned, you are the better judge. So you should be in a position to identify what can go wrong in this particular plant, maybe electrical, maybe process. If last 10 years fire hazards are concerned, the 80% is the negligence, or what you said, that chalta attitude is very difficult to change in Indian community. That safety culture is very difficult to inculcate in our day-to-day life. So that we have to change. How chalta hai, ek aur plug dal do, then your electrical load is going to increase. Then some other day there will be a fluctuation and electrical short circuit will be there, or electrical surge will be there. The majority in the process industry, the static electricity is a major challenge, and how to ground the all processes at different levels or different intervals, that is a real challenge, that is not maintained properly. So earthing is a major challenge for transformers. So these are the real issues which we know at the time of installation, that as per the standard procedures, maybe Electricity Act or rules, or maybe the Factory Acts and rules, Fire Act and rules. So we know which are the mandatory requirements. So every person, if he is aware about what type of potential risk he is handling, so he is a better judge how to overcome it. So if this is my risk, how in case of emergency I am going to overcome it. So if this can be planned and documented in every plant, definitely this will become a guidelines for risk assessment, and how to keep your plant and workers safe from this any eventuality. So this way it should start, and then if you mature at some level, then definitely the entry of the third external agency to carry out external audit, that will help a lot for implementing or ensuring more safety in the plant. So that is means actual requirement of the audit. In NBC, it is just highlighted, but there is no qualification is mentioned. As you know, in Factory Act, there is some qualification, and the enlisting of auditors, safety auditors is there. But unfortunately, in Maharashtra Fire Act, it is not there. We have to amend the act, and we have to incorporate this for the fire. Then definitely it can be implemented. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. So no question from audience. I don't see any hand. In case you still have last opportunity, few minutes, so you can raise the hand so that Mr. Warik can answer in case you have any specific question for him. I'll move on quickly because then we need to have very limited time to wind up. Last week I have launched already the new program, Train the Trainer. Make sure that you understand your gap in terms of becoming a trainer in our organization, because doesn't matter you have a good knowledge, experience, but then there are specific training skills are required to become a trainer in the organization so that it becomes more effective. So we are going to have this specific program for specific end users. It's not meant for any consultants or freelancers. We will have a separate program for them exclusively. But this, the first program, we are going to be only restricted for 30 people, and this will be on online platform. It will be 3 days between 14th to 16th of January. Lot of insights. I'm sure you will love this program, and whosoever have that hidden wish in the mind that I need to really face 100 people in my organization and deliver what I know or what I experienced, this can really sharpen your skills. So this is how we are going to be the program. There is another program. I mean, of course, the fees is attached. There is a small fee that we have allocated because there is expense involved and we need to do more programs. So it is not something for. In fact, we will lose out money out of this, but then we want to really do it in a bigger way, taking this ahead. So we have kept this only for restricted people so that they can invest on that, and we can give a justice, one-on-one justice to everyone. So this is what your registration link is available. Whoever wants to register quickly, they can register or they can circulate it. I'm going to be launching another program today. The announcement, internal FLS auditor. Uh, there is always practice for occupational safety, become a lead auditor internal, and is becoming a at least some where people are following the internal audits for occupational safety, but specifically for fire and life safety, neither there is an external practice, forget about internal. But I think if you really want to inculcate safety culture, it has to come within. It cannot be bought by the people outside. So we need to develop the talent in-house, internal. That's our program that we are going to be launching this. It's going to be again 3 days exclusive professional for only the end user community. Uh, uh, and whosoever are involved in fire and safety operations, probably they can come forward on this program. It will be again very an insightful program that we are going to have, covering the entire aspect about fire and safety. What's the methodology? What's the skill set required? How do you start? How do you end? What are the elements of audit? What are the benchmarking? How do you really make it your audit as the successful tool in our organization? How do you report it? How do you present it? Again, that's a skill, because if you make the audit and if it is not reached to top management, it is a waste exercise, right? So these are again content that we are going to have. We are going to use a lot of templates of doing it on your own. And whole idea is that, I mean, of course, we also do a lot of audits, but then that's becoming business. Okay. Ultimately, once in 2 years, you can still invest on external audit, but this is an activity that you need to do on a daily basis. If not on daily basis formally, but at least have that frequency which is based on your risk. It could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, but have that mechanism built into the organization, and it needs to be acquired by the skill. That's when we are going this program live. This is not something very common in the industry. We are going to be first time doing this program. It will be, I think, great story for you to write. So whosoever are involved in fire and safety operations, please invest on this. Again, investment will be the same. It will be for 3 days. It will be just 9,900 including GST. So make sure that whosoever wants to do it, please register it. And it will be in the month of January again, 21st, 22 and 23 January. We still have 1 month to go. Plan your holidays and schedule it based on your convenience, but I think it is worth. Yeah. So just to summarize, we covered a lot of aspect in terms of life safety. So audit is something that is going to be captured by specialist. Although now there are accredited bodies, there is nothing that people can call themselves as approved auditor or certified auditor. It is purely competency, experience that you can look at it and engage, people from outside industry. But what you expect has to be clear. So these are some of the components that are going to be captured in fire and life safety, which is going to be part of your reports. Just wanted to give you a quick snapshot how actually audit can help you. Like typically look at it one facility, and it could be a BPO IT office or large office that you can have where you have two exits and there is a long corridor or workplace where you have a travel distance between A to B, which is going to be larger. So when you work out the travel distance, people don't know how to compute it. People don't know how to really look at your dead end, whether it's going to be dead end or it's going to be my part of travel distance. So there are risk assessment that you can look at it. How do you look at it? Look at your area, which is going to be a small risk or a medium risk or high risk. What are the things involved? Is any combustible fire hazard involved, or there are no combustible? So based on the nature of that assessment that you do, you can decide what is my travel distance that can be permissible. Doesn't matter, code is going to allow you to 45 meter. But then if your dead end is going to be A to B distance is going to be higher and it is going to be contributing 70% of your travel distance, then it's better that you look at that as a dead end corridor and see how this can be mitigated. So there are multiple ways. You can of course have the detection system, which is most reliable, wherein you can have prominent exit and then still accept, because this is what going to be low risk area for you. It's just a workplace area, 9 to 5 people are there and that's about it. So then that is still acceptable because you are going to meet your travel distance criteria 45 meter, and it's an area which is sprinkler protected. It's an area with lively healthy detection area also with extinguishers, exit marks. So that is one option. Second option could be, if you know that there is a medium risk involved, you can look at compartmentation in terms of fire door, in terms of fire barrier. So that becomes a fire corridor for you. So although the distance between A to B is higher, you are still finding the risk because out of risk assessment, and you are making that as a fire corridor. So there is a less risk of propagating the smoke and people can evacuate it. So that's the second option that you can think of. And of course, third option, nothing but if there's a high risk involved, you need to find an alternate exit so that there is no long distance or there's no dead end distance that you can have. So these are multiple ways that you can work on, and it will be only and only can be done when you have a risk assessment done. And these are some of the practical challenges I want to show you here. And there are many cases where they have no clarity and they're just working on it until accident happens, they are just compromised. So these are how you can evaluate the risk. Even remotest exit, it has to be 45 degree based on the standard. Okay, in India, NBC doesn't specifically talk about 45 degree, but it's talk about remote exits. When you say remote exits, that means technically it has to be away from each other. But if suppose you are not able to meet that, and you just put the exits next to each other, and there are many facilities I have seen, just for last moment, somebody as a compliant issue, you want to have another exit, you added another exit. But then if there is a fire barrier that you can have, you can still mitigate the risk. So this is how your risk assessment is going to be doing the job and qualify yourself that you are compliant. So this is how the practical issues which will get notified only when you invest on review and audit as such. So there are multiple ways that you can manage it. There are service shafts where builder or developer or main client is going to say that this is a fire door and this shaft only accessible to common facility management, not for tenant. So you display it, but it's a wooden door. Yeah, and occupants will not know what it is. It is neither secure. But when you do a risk assessment and you identify it's a wooden door, it is not protected, it is not sealed. It is the cables inside are mixed control and power cables. So these are some of the surprises that only will come when you do a risk assessment and audit. So these are some of the gaps that are important that you need to know how when you look at the concept. So I hope I have covered you a lot of insight today. But let's carry away some of the reflection that we always every week do that. Ask yourself these questions. Have you identified your risk and hazards? Ask yourself, what is a risk? What is a hazard? How often your facility is being audited internally or externally? I'm sure this is a beginning question for you, but it's important that you need to ask yourself, because once you ask, then only you know what's the correct answer. Is the current review program adequate or needs changes? When you ask this question, then only you know that, okay, no, I don't have a system, or maybe I have a limited source. I have incompetent people in house. Some of the answers will give you directions to think and act about it. So with this note, I think there are no questions I can see. Um, um, there are no hand that I can see on raise. So probably I can, it's time up anyway. It's more than 1:10. So thank you so much. Let's conclude today's session with national anthem. Thank you, Farik sir, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and see you next Sunday, 11:30. Till that time, take rest, stay safe.